So, where are you at in South Africa right now with the pandemic? How are things with regards to lockdown, cases, vaccines, all of that stuff that's become common parlance for us over the last 10, 12 months?
How depressing do you want this interview to be?
Yeah, I just want you to tell the truth as far as you can.
So help me God. So South Africa, seemingly our government pretty much forgot to buy vaccines.
All right, okay.
And so there was a massive uproar in January when it became apparent that there were no vaccines coming and nothing had been purchased. So there's been a huge uproar. Civil society has, through various organizations, applied massive pressure on government.
Right.
Really dropped the ball. We've had a number of trials being run in South Africa, and the government didn't leverage our position to get access to the vaccines once they had been developed. Just absolutely nuts. Even in the COVAX system, which is only for 10% of the population, yes. Couldn't make the first couple of payments. It ended up being paid for by a private organization and not by government, which is absurd. So there's been a couple of hilarious run-ins where there's been fiascos in terms of procurement, but we had our first vaccines yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And so we have 80,000 vaccines that arrived 2 days ago for a population of over 60 million. And that's not a lot so far. So we literally are 1 day into a minuscule vaccine program. And from what it looks like, most of the vaccines will only come to the population at large in the last quarter of this year.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but we're in almost the opposite situation here because we apparently in Canada pre-ordered.
You've bought all the vaccines.
Well, no, it's not quite as simple as that. We had pre-ordered more per head of population than anyone else in the world.
That'd be 5 times is what I read.
But none of it arrived, or hardly any of it has arrived due to supply problems. So we're lagging way behind with the number of people vaccinated. So it's, each country has their own individual issues going on with this, for sure. So I'm not exactly sure where we stand right now. I haven't read the news this morning, at least not that part of the news. And with regards to cases and the like, how are things in South Africa?
Well, we're approaching 50,000 cases of proven death from COVID.
Right.
Like I said, I think we have the highest numbers in the continent.
Right.
But also, in a system like South Africa, in a developing nation, let's put it that way, there's a huge number of what they call excess deaths. So, the scientists attribute those to COVID. So our real numbers are much, much higher.
Right.
But official numbers are almost 50,000.
Speaking to Africa as a continent, I was reading something, I think it was yesterday, where they were kind of confused as to the numbers that were coming out of Africa as a continent, because they were expecting a massive spread of this pandemic across the continent, but it appears that hasn't happened. Have you read anything about that?
Yeah, I mean, quite a bit. I'd also read about Canada as well.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things. First of all, our systems across the continent are not developed like they are in the developed world. So the figures are less reliable. Obviously.
Right, I see. Yeah.
Secondly, the population of Africa is probably the youngest in the world. If you look at the demographics, the amount of people who are under 30 years old or under 25 years is the vast majority. If you look in the developed world, the aging populations. So as we know, this disease disproportionately hits older people. So just by virtue of the demographics of Africa, you're getting a lot less people who are dying proportionately. So I think it's a combination of those factors. I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but that seems to be with a common denominator of what I'm reading.
Interesting. Well, to end this interview on a positive note, may I ask you, about how well, let's say the first COVID vintage 2020 turned out to be, and your hopes and dreams for the 2021 vintage.
Well, the vintage is in full swing at the moment. We are probably approaching halfway for us. We had another wet winter.
Yeah.
So this is 6 years into the cycle, which started with 3 years of very, very profound drought, very extreme drought. And this is the first time that we've had not only sufficient time away from the end of the drought, but we've also had 2 winters and a good wet winter. So our vineyards and our soils have returned to good health. So that in itself is really exciting. So the quality and the balance that we're seeing in the vines is fantastic. Crop yields are probably approaching the 10-year average, as opposed, they're not high, but they're certainly not the lows that we had.
Right.
But the balance is lovely, and we Radford Dale, we like to make wines which are very balanced, and we don't make big, hefty, alcoholic, extracted wines. We tend to make elegant wines.
So you can really, really sense that the impact of that first wet winter in the 2020s that you've already bottled.
Yeah, I mean, the 2020s definitely helped, and because the vines were not nearly as stressed as they had been. I mean, you want to have a certain amount of stress, but after 3 years of no water, they were a lot. We had vines dying. Our dams were empty as well. But in 2020, we definitely saw a recovery. But 2021, I mean, the vine takes a while to recover. It's like,
yeah, of course.
It's like anything. If you've been in poor health and really sick, you don't get better within a week. It takes time, and the same thing applies. But we've seen, we've been pioneering, for example, in South Africa. We've reintroduced Gamay into the South African vineyard. It had disappeared, and we are now the only Gamay producer, and we make 3 different Gamays. But we're seeing in a vintage like 2020 the quality of the grape, the flavors in the grapes, and the delicacy in the grapes is the best we've seen. And so I'm very excited about that. And then the Chenin's are very pretty. Chenin's a very versatile grape, and you can make all different styles. But we feel that Chenin is the grape that really maps out our geology better than any other grape. If you take Chardonnay and Burgundy, the soil types are all translated through one grape, which is Chardonnay, into the different flavors that you get from the different parts of Burgundy, whether it's Meursault or whether it's Prix, whatever. The same thing happens with Chenin in our environment. It really, because you've got Chenin everywhere, and because we've got a lot of old vine Chenin, it enables you to really taste the vintage, and B, the specific soil types in the different areas. So the Chenin grapes are really our litmus test, and we think that the Chenin this year is going to be absolutely stunning, which is great news for us because it's 50% of what we do.
Yeah. And what kind of restrictions?
Can I flash this to you? Because
of course you can. The antidote.
I want to try and get the LCBO buying our Gamay at some point.
And the antidote, that's the Gamay there, right?
Yes, that's one of our Gamays. This is our single vineyard old vine Gamay.
Oh, nice. Okay, I don't think I've tasted that.
No, you wouldn't have done. No. We've only made it. This is our 3rd vintage. We haven't released it yet. We're about to release it.
Right.
But we've never sold Gamay We've never sold that Gamay in Canada. We do have a Gamay called Thirst.
Yeah, which is gorgeous. Yeah, love that.
Which is a quaffer of note. But this is our serious one.
And one last thing, with you halfway through the vintage right now, the harvest, what kind of restrictions and how have you had to change your harvesting with the restrictions surrounding the pandemic?
Well, this vintage, thankfully, we haven't had the interruptions to our production or the threats to interruptions to our production. That was a victory that was scored by our industry association right at the 12th hour last year, and so even if we have a curfew, we do have a curfew, and depending on the level of the lockdown, it's been different times. But you know, all we have to do is print a certificate for each employee, so that we have free movement of people who are working on vintage. So in that respect, we haven't been hampered this year.
All right. Okay.
Thank goodness. For production, in terms of sales, we've had massive disruption.
Right. I can understand. Well, I wish you all the best with the rest of your harvest. And I do appreciate you joining us on Good Food Revolution today, because it's been about 10 years since you were last on Good Food Revolution. But I wish you all the best with the rest of the harvest. And despite the dark topics that we covered, I do appreciate every last word that you uttered there. Thank you so much. And hopefully we can speak again sometime soon.
Jamie, it's been a pleasure. I'm an optimist. The South African wine industry is very resilient, and I think our best years are ahead of us. So we'll get through this, and I'm looking forward to getting back to Ontario so we could enjoy some times together again. I'm missing
I
it.
would love to share a glass of wine with you. Thanks so much.
All right, cheers.